I hate soccer.
Yes.
Kelly is the person that told me about you.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I love Kelly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
She's phenomenal.
And a lot of our players actually work with her on the side. Do you know if any of our players do?
That's a good question. So I have not, like, specifically, there have been like a handful of soccer players I've talked to, and they've talked about like going to showcases and things like that, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay, if they train with us.
Yes,
or anything
exactly.
Like that. I'm sure it'll intertwine. Do you want anything to drink?
No, I'm good. I got some water if I need it. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could start there, but the reason why I wanted to have you on is that about at the beginning of May, our college players started coming in, and then they all started telling me stories about eating disorders in college, and most of it is anorexia. But I wanted to start there. Like, where does that stem from? Does it stem from just the competition factor, or is it social media and how they look? Is it the NIL? Think about like, well, I have to, on the female side, it's like, well, so-and-so got a deal with whatever brand. There's so many things
There's
to
a lot of
unpack.
Yeah.
So anything that you want to like start with, by all means.
Yeah, that's definitely probably the number one thing like I really like to get across is like the underfueling side of things.
Yep.
And then eating disordered eating. That's
Yeah.
like one thing I really like to talk about because parents don't always see that, or sometimes they'll miss some of those beginning signs and symptoms.
Okay. Under eating. When should you start? And do you even believe in calorie counting and making sure that you are properly fueled? And you know what? I'm 500 calories short, or I went 700 calories over. Do you believe in that stuff? When should you do that?
So it's a sensitive thing. I think for certain athletes that it can play a role, but in many cases we don't need to do calorie counting. We don't need to be looking at those macronutrients right off the bat. So for me, when I'm working with athletes, I'll do some food journaling with them where they'll take photos and they can kind of get a sense of what their plate looks like, the frequency at which they're eating, and what goes on their plates. But I do not have a majority of at least my youth athletes and even some of my collegiate athletes doing any sort of calorie tracking.
And no macronutrients. So no like protein measuring or anything like that?
Sometimes. It depends on the athlete I'm working with. So if I kind of get the sense that they're really what's the word? Like really drawn into the numbers, they're starting to be like really obsessive or really overly concerned or worried about it, then that's a sign to me we need to pull back on looking at those numbers because we just look at the numbers and we don't look at all the habits together, which is really important.
Right. This is like a sidebar, but my nephew is going in to play college football at Eastern Michigan. He's a tight end. He's a little underweight for the position, so they want him to bulk up. And he told me he's eating like 5,000 calories.
Yes.
Do you work with any like football guys where they have to like bulk up and go crazy?
Yep, hockey. I've worked with some hockey players that we're working on that, as well as some football players. And yes, 4,000 or 5,000 calories without a doubt. It's like a job, a full-time job. And in addition, it's a lot.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's just to bulk so if it's 5,000 to bulk, let's say he was at the perfect weight and he wanted to maintain, that would probably be 3,000 calories.
Yep.
So then when you start thinking about soccer men, I don't want to talk about calories so much, but
No, it's still
you
important.
have to eat a lot.
Yes.
And one of the parent I was just talking to, they have a 13, 14-year-old kid, and he's a little on the smaller side. He's relatively tall, but he's a little bit on the smaller side, and they want to bulk him up. And it's almost... I'll let you answer this, but it's almost like he's 13. He hasn't even hit puberty maybe yet. So do they even need to be worried about that stuff at that age?
So they should be worried about eating enough. I'll leave it just like at that point. They should be worried about eating enough food, but we do have to remember as they're going through puberty, they are going to put on some muscle mass, because right now, because I have a lot of parents and younger athletes at that age that'll come to me that say like, I want to put on muscle, I want to put on weight. And we can put on some muscle, we can put on weight, but that muscle is going to be a bit limited because we are still going through puberty.
Right.
There is more growth. So we have some limitations, just knowing that.
Right. Okay. Now, if we did want to track anything, what are the benchmarks of what we should be hitting if we are a 16-year-old girl and we're looking to play D1 soccer, and they're not too skinny, they're not overweight or anything like that. What is like some benchmark things that they can track?
Yeah. So I want to first off start off by saying that I don't think tracking your calories is inherently like a dangerous thing to do. I think it can be beneficial in some situations.
Right.
But remembering that calories are energy. So a lot of times when I'm talking to athletes, I might change that like wording of calories equal energy. It's the energy that's going into our body. Right. So with that said, if I have a young female athlete that I'm working with, I am hard pressed to ever recommend anything if we are looking at energy calorie amounts, anything honestly less than 2,500 in most cases.
Anything less than 2,500?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. How many young kids do you work with? Do you work with anybody that's like 10? Or
I would say mostly I prefer to kind of be in that range of like 16 to 18 at my youngest, but I do have some athletes that are like 13, 14 up until like 16. I still work with some youth athletes, but it's not the bulk of the work that I do at the younger ones.
When people are like sending you the pictures of the journal or you're showing you the journal. Yeah. Are you ever like, "Oh my God, don't eat that"?
No. Never.
Really?
I really am not. When I'm looking at a journal, the first thing that I am looking for when my brain and my eyes are scanning this is, are we eating enough throughout the day? So if I see that we have one meal logged and then, a granola bar or a yogurt somewhere, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not eating enough versus, oh my gosh, why are we eating that?
Right.
And that's a misconception. Okay. They think the dietitian's there to be like, oh my gosh, don't eat this.
This is what you should be eating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a partnership, a collaboration with that, because everybody's so different in their likes and dislikes and whatever other health things they have going on and their goals.
What do you think of fasting?
I don't love it.
You don't love it?
I don't love it, especially for our younger athletes. But even for the adults I work with, I've never ever recommended fasting for anybody, especially because with the adults that I work with, they're still pretty active people. Right. So when we're fasting, depending on the length of the window we're fasting, it can make it really difficult to get in the amount of calories, nutrition from a protein lens, from a carbohydrate lens, and even micronutrient lens.
Okay. Good. I mean, it's good to know. I mean, because there is so much out there. There's so much literature on it, and you just don't know. Like, I could pull up an article that says bananas are the worst thing you can eat. Then I have one that says this is a superfood, and you should be eating this all the time. And it's like, I have no idea what to do. And people my age are like, well, we're going to be vegan this month. Well, we're going to be carnivore this month. We're going to do paleo or whatever. And it's like, I don't know what to do. And balance. How do you have like a balanced diet?
I know it sounds so boring, and I think this is why there isn't a lot of buy-in to it, but having the general balance on that plate, and I talk a lot with my athletes about performance plates. And so these performance plates, basically, we have our carbohydrate or starch on the plate, we have our protein, we have our fruit or a vegetable, and then we have some dietary fat in the meal. And these plates will vary in the portions of these nutrients on the plate depending on what their intensity looks like and time on feet looks like as far as playing goes. Right. So that's kind of where I'm at. Now, naturally, of course, when we're looking at what we put on that plate, are we putting some whole foods on this plate for the most part?
Yeah.
It's okay if we grab food out to go. I mean, it's a natural, especially when we talk about going to tournaments and traveling, things like that.
It's hard.
Or just existing as a human.
Right.
But the majority of the time, if we can follow through these performance plates, we can get enough food in our system. We can get enough nutritional variety.
Is there a time? Okay, so fasting out the window. So, let's say you don't have the normal like schedule. Let's say you're a college athlete and your first session is at 6 a.m. Are you supposed to wake up at like 5 and eat, or is it person to person? Because some people are morning eaters and some people aren't, and like it's crazy to think. Or what happens if, okay, you're an adult and you're working at a hospital and you're working overnights, and like that wreaks havoc on your entire ecosystem too. Mm-hmm. So is there a set? There's not a set. There can't be.
Yeah, and that's where nutrition is so nuanced. So in the perfect world, yeah, we'd be able to get up a couple hours before our morning practice and eat a full-fledged meal.
Right.
But as a college student, you're not going to be able to do that because you also need to get enough sleep, right?
Right.
So with these athletes, I say, let's wake up on the way to practice. Let's grab a granola bar, or if they can't tolerate solids, if that feeling makes them a little nauseous, I say let's have a sports drink so that we're getting the fluids and we're getting the carbs in, so you have energy for practice. And then afterwards, you can go and have your breakfast.
Is there any sports drinks that you don't like, that you study that are like, okay, this is better? Or because we have a little vending machine out there, and I put Prime, and then what do I got? Body Armor, and then Gatorade and Powerade. It's like, but then you'll read something and say, oh, don't drink G2 because it has this one ingredient in it. And it's like, are we just in our heads?
I think for the most part, in most cases, for what we need in life as like athletes, yes, we get in our heads with things. We really overanalyze these things to the point where we're not getting enough of what we need. So, for example, let's talk sports drinks. So Powerade, Gatorade are going to fill the majority of the things that we need. They have ample amount of carbs. Mm-hmm. They obviously have fluids in them, and they have sodium, which is the major electrolyte that we are losing, or salt, the major electrolyte that we're losing in our sweat. Uh-huh. So when they come out with things like, I always like to pick on Body Armor here.
Okay.
But Body Armor has a low salt concentration in it, and some of those products also have a lower carb concentration.
Okay.
So if we are sweating a lot, it's summertime now. I hope this weather's here to stay. But if we're sweating a lot, we have a higher need for salt. And if it's a lower amount in that Body Armor, we're not getting a lot of what we need in that. Okay. So if you notice that you're drinking Body Armor, but you're cramping, you're getting fatigued, you're getting headaches after practice, you might need to consider something like a higher salt replenishment from your sports drink.
What about liquid IV and the powders and all of that? Anything you recommend or say no? I like the sugar-free personally, just because I don't want to drink a lot of sugar. Mm-hmm. But I mean,
yeah. So liquid IV has roughly around 500 milligrams of sodium, which is a higher replenishment from an electrolyte drink. Now, that can be useful, but if you are a soccer athlete or an athlete that's training or playing for longer than 60 to 90 minutes, I'm going to want you to switch over to a sports drink, which has the salts, but also has carbs in it. Liquid IV does not have enough carbs for longer playing times.
Okay.
Unless you're getting your carbs from like a food source, if you're having some oranges or you're having some pretzels during.
Right. Pretzels. I used to work with a guy. I used to coach at University of Detroit, and one of our trainers worked with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And their number one snack at the time was chocolate milk and pretzels. The reasoning is because it has every single thing that you need. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if we run through it from a recovery drink, it has, protein, it has electrolytes in it, so it does have some salt, it has some potassium in it to help with the sweat losses. It also has some carbs in it, and it has fluid in it, which is obviously you're losing that when you're sweating.
Right.
And then we switch over to those pretzels. It has some carbs. It has some electrolytes. So yeah, it really is pretty complete.
Wow. Okay.
I love chocolate milk.
Yeah.
Makes it easy for these youth athletes.
It does. What about, Okay, I have 1,000 things that I like. What about creatine? Okay.
Okay, buckle up. So I really do like creatine, but
Okay.
with youth athletes, we have to understand that there are not a lot of studies to say youth athletes, like their safety with this. Like we've studied this in youth athletes and we 100% know that it's a safe product to use.
Okay.
However, creatine in adults has been studied as one of the safest supplements. So it's a bit nuanced and it depends on the situation. I have used it with youth athletes before, but it's when I know that this youth athlete is, number one, eating enough food, eating enough calories. We're doing everything from the nutrition approach that we should do, and then we can potentially layer in creatine if it makes sense.
Water has something to do with it too, because it kind of dehydrates you, right?
Yes, it can. It really helps to pull more water in. Like that's the mechanism of action, like pull more water into your cells. So some athletes will complain of like upset stomach and some bloating with it, but it pulls a little bit of water out of the body into the cells. So yes, we have to make sure that we're drinking enough water with it to stay well hydrated.
Why isn't there more, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I mean, I have like books at home about like our, like obviously diets, breath, like how many times, like breathing exercises and stuff like that. But I can't find anything on water, on proper hydration. Like, is there, I mean, obviously you have to, if you're trying to lose weight, obviously you should be drinking like as much water as possible. But I think water is the most important thing that we put in our bodies. But is there a go-to standard to replenish all the water that we're losing through sweat?
There is some things that you can do. Generally speaking, with most of the athletes I work with, we'll kind of do like a general goal of like, we want to make sure that we're drinking every 15 minutes, taking in like maybe 6 to 12 ounces of water with some of my youth athletes during gameplay at least.
Okay.
And then from there, we kind of look at, okay, when you are peeing during the day, do we have like a lighter color urine? Do we have a completely clear color urine? Or do we have like a darker color urine, like an apple juice or a ginger ale color?
So that's true. Okay. So I used to live by that because I had some old mentors that would be like, you need to be peeing clear. And like that means that you're hydrated, properly hydrated. And if it's dark, it's like you need to drink more water. And then I don't know, 5 years ago, one of my buddies was like, "Oh no, that's just a lie. That's just an old wives' tale." It's like, no, I think that's real. But then now he got me thinking like, "Oh no, that's not true."
Yeah.
So it's true.
It is true with a little bit of nuance here.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that it's not completely clear every time we go to the bathroom, because that could be a sign that we're overhydrating. We're drinking too much fluids.
Okay.
So look at this throughout the course of your day. You'll probably notice when you wake up in the morning and, your first pee is usually a little dark. That's because we're a little dehydrated in the morning. But as we drink throughout the day, we're going to see, lighter colors. So look for that light lemonade color, I say, for my youth athletes, as a sense of like, okay, I'm doing pretty well with hydration, but we do not always want to be peeing clear, because that means we're, again, potentially diluting some of the electrolyte concentration, which also plays a role in hydration.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on like caffeine and coffee?
So there's definitely been a lot of misinformation, if you will, in terms of coffee. So if we're having, a few cups a day, that's still going to count towards our fluid intake for the day, and it's not going to be massively dehydrating by any means. Okay. When we're talking about drinking like pots of coffee, like excessive amounts of coffee throughout the day, this is something where we should probably consider that idea of balance. Like how can we maybe reduce some of that, bring in some water, bring in some other drinks that are also going to help with hydration.
Okay. Wow.
But for, honestly, for some of my athletes that deal with more significant side effects of like high sweat losses, let's say they get cramping, they have dehydration, they get headaches or even nauseous after they work out. Sometimes we'll even do some sweat testing. So there's at-home sweat testing I do with some of my athletes. We do like a weigh in, a weigh out. How much did you drink during? How much did you lose? And then we kind of personalize a hydration plan from there. And then there's even tests on the market where there are sensors you can wear. You can also order patches from companies to put it on while you're playing, and then you send it to the lab, and they give you an idea of your losses and your electrolyte concentration as well.
I saw like on your Instagram yesterday or today that you were doing some kind of testing with that. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, we were using the
sweat,
yeah.
the sweat test.
Yeah.
Wow. How many like organizations are you working with, or teams? Do you work with full teams, or is it just mostly this player and individuals?
Yeah, so it's a mix. So I have my own private practice, so
Okay.
I see individual athletes, but then I also work with a local run club. I work with Damon Athletics as well.
Okay.
I've done talks for various teams throughout my career as a sports dietitian.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of all over the place.
When you go into one of these talks, do they give you the topic that they want you to cover, or is it more broad and you kind of hit on all the different things?
I like to ask. I always ask the coach, what are you finding that your athletes are struggling with? What are you noticing, or what are parents talking about more consistently?
Okay.
Because I want to come in there and really provide value to what is currently going on. Sometimes they notice that some of their athletes are under eating or really struggling with body image and then under eating as a result. Sometimes they notice that their athletes are eating nothing before practice. So I really try to tailor specifically what's going on.
This episode is brought to you by PlayMaker Training Camp. This summer, we are hosting 2 separate camps in 2 different locations. One in Akron, New York from July 14th to the 17th, and another in Williamsville, New York, July 28th to the 31st. Camp staff are former PlayMaker Training athletes that are currently playing in Division I, Division II, Division III, or former pros. We also have group rates for groups of more than 10 players. We have sibling rates if you have a brother or a sister that would like to join. We also have discounts for choosing to go to both camps. You can register now at playmakertraining.com/summercamps. Is there a perfect, okay, let's say you're in the afternoon and these kids are coming out of school or out of class. Is there a perfect time of like, okay, an hour before training, 2 hours before training? Is anything on that?
As far as the food goes, I usually tell people to, if they have, let's say they have a practice at 5 o'clock, if they can eat their lunch within somewhere between 3 to 4 hours before, that's great.
Okay.
Now, let's say I've worked with an athlete recently who had their lunch at 10 a.m.
Well, yeah. Well, school,
Exactly.
like high schoolers they're probably on that schedule.
Exactly.
Where they're eating lunch literally at 10:30.
Yeah. So in that situation, I'd have them when they get home from school. This might be something like a 2 or 3 o'clock. Have a meal then, and then top off with a quick carb snack before they go. So this might be something like grabbing a granola bar or an orange on their way out and into practice.
Years and years ago, this is for an NHL team. It was Red Wings, and they had basically a game day schedule. And it went from morning, it was like breakfast, morning skate, nap, lunch. And they had to eat something like 2,000 calories worth of like pasta and carbo loading and whatnot. And then it was like another nap, and then pregame, and then all this stuff. And it was like, this is crazy. Carbo loading. Like, is that real? Is that real with like marathon runners or anybody the night before a game?
Yeah, always recommend that. So depending on what the event is. So if you're talking about runners, carbo loading can be anywhere from 1 to 3 days. Each day we're eating big amounts of carbohydrates leading into that. And then for some of my athletes that, soccer athletes, or they're going into tournaments, I'll also have them do a carb load leading into it. So an increase in carbohydrates over multiple days. We're not just talking about pasta the night before.
Right.
I really want to highlight that. It's a whole 1 to 2 days, sometimes even 3-day experience of increasing carbs.
Okay, so think about, I learned this years ago, about if you're studying for a test, if you study 2 nights before, you're going to do better than if you only studied the night before. Same thing with like a hard workout. The second day almost after is always worse than the first day. Is that... So you're saying 2 days. So let's say you have a big game on Saturday. You need to start preparing your body on Thursday. on Wednesday, really.
Yep.
It's a full time. Being an athlete is full time.
It really is. And like that schedule you just mentioned to me, it sounds crazy and it is, but having a schedule like that with everything else you have going on, especially I think of high school, yes, but even when we get into collegiate athletics, it's like we increase practices, we increase lifts. We're doing 2-a-days. We also have practice, school schedule. We have labs. We have to get to the dining hall before they close. What other spots are open? So sometimes really I will sit with athletes and we'll make a plan of like what that day looks like, what the class schedule looks like. And we will really try to write out a rough schedule of what that's going to look like.
With your clients, do you do meal prep? Like on Sunday, let's make everything for the week. Are you that? Do you do that or not really?
It totally depends. So for my personal benefit, I hate cooking during the week, so I always will make a bunch of stuff on a Sunday. But for some people, they're like, I can't eat the same thing for more than a day or two. We will do like a couple different methods. So sometimes we'll do some batch cooking on a weekend, like you're suggesting, and then have some things throughout the week.
Right.
So I always ask them, like, what is the thing you hate to make the most during the week? For some people, it's like, oh, I hate making the protein. Okay, well, we're going to make the protein on Sunday when you have more time, and then we'll fill in with some of the grains and some of the veggies throughout the week.
Okay. So
it depends on what do I like to eat, what time do I have available during the week, and the frequency in which I like to repeat some foods.
Got it. How big into the biggest craze right now in health is reading about the microplastics and stuff that we're intaking supposedly. Are you suggesting metal bottles or anything like that yet, or is this just still too early to tell?
It really depends. I always kind of think like, where is this individual athlete at? Because it's so nuanced. So if I'm sitting down with an athlete who isn't eating 3 meals a day and we have concern about microplastics, I'm like, okay, we need to put our energy where it makes most sense right now. Because if we're worried about potential toxins, because I know this is the wording that's used, we're taking in, how are we also helping to support our body if we're not eating enough food?
Right.
So kind of like just taking things, especially when they're sensationalized in the media, as a grain of salt and really zooming out and looking at the big picture. Yes, I think there's some validity to making sure we're not taking in excess loads of potential toxins that are out there, which is not my favorite word. But again, we have to look at the big picture and where we're at, because I think being scared and being fearful over food and consumption can be really, really problematic for a lot of these athletes.
Yeah. Again, there's just so much out there, and it's almost like they're trying to scare us. It's like they're scaring us from eating anything and drinking anything. So then we're all just going to be sick anyway.
And it leads to disordered eating practices, and that's, huge in sports for male and female athletes.
The social media aspect of some of these disorders, how do you approach a player like that in terms of, is it after you've seen their journal or after you've seen what they're eating, or is it a performance based, or do you track their sleep and stuff like that? Because food affects our sleep as well, right? And like when we eat and how close to bed and stuff like that. How do you approach something like that?
Yeah. So depending, I look at a lot of different things when I'm working with athletes. So first I want to hear what their goals are, right? What are our major goals? Are they performance goals? And then I ask, if there's only performance goals listed, then we also have to talk about health goals, because health goes into performance.
Exactly.
So I like to hear their goals first, and then they'll start tracking. So maybe it's food, pictures, and then on my intake forms, which are my questionnaires I have athletes fill out, I ask, how much are we sleeping? Are we getting quality sleep? Are we waking up during the night? Are we going to the bathroom every day? So it's like a full system checks of sleep, bowel habits, what's going on health-wise, medication, supplement-wise. And then from there, with their goals, I kind of build a roadmap of sorts and kind of look at the big picture of, okay, this is their goal. What are the lowest hanging fruits that we're going to work on first that are going to give them some wins so they're more bought into this process?
Got it.
So with their journals, I might pick out some things of like, okay, if we're not sleeping well, why aren't we sleeping well? Are we scrolling on our phone before bed? Are we not eating anything hours before bed? Are we doing both? And then we'll have a conversation from there and see if they want to work on some of that stuff.
Okay. What let's go back to like the fasting thing. So you used to train out of a CrossFit gym. Our soccer company was out of it was a baseball and a CrossFit gym. And they would always say, every 2 hours you should be eating tiny meals or 6 meals a day. Is that what you would tell athletes? Or again, it's so nuanced.
It is. And I often am in the 3 to 4 hour range with my recommendations for most athletes. That's when I notice that they're able to meet their nutrition needs, is when they're spacing it out in that way. They could do it through the 2 hours too, but 3 to 4 hours is a little good, is good from the sense of we have a little bit of rest and digest with our gut, but we also are able to get in enough nutrition throughout the day.
Okay. And then if you're eating every 3 hours, is it mainly meal, snack, meal?
Yeah, I'd say most of the athletes I work with are eating 3 meals a day and 2 to 3 snacks a day.
Okay.
For some of my athletes, they might do 4 meals or even 5 meals and do less snacking. It's always like, how do you want to do this? How do you thrive best? That's when I'll make the recommendation based on what they want and how they feel.
Are there any hacks, like in terms of a snack hack? Let's say they're on a road trip and they're by themselves and they have a game Thursday and then Sunday, and then every time that they want to go out to eat, or the team wants to go out to eat, it's Chipotle or it's some type of fast food, but they want snacks in between. What would be a go-to hack that like some of these players should take on?
Yeah,
try?
It depends. So if it's something that you're traveling with and you can bring yourself, that might lean itself to something a little different where you can grab and go.
Right.
But from a snack perspective, sandwiches work well, PBJ, turkey sandwiches. There's a lot of different granola bars, even some... I'm careful with saying protein bars because we want to make sure that they have enough carbs in them too. Some of those protein bars are void of carbs.
Any that you recommend?
Off the top of my head, I really like Go Macro is one of my favorites recently that I like for athletes. Honestly, the standard Cliff bar isn't too bad, especially those Cliff Builder bars if we're going to tournaments and competitions.
Yeah.
Those ones have a decent amount. So those are the first two that are coming to my head.
What about the Goo energy gels and all of that? I used to do those when I was playing in like men's leagues like 10 years ago.
Yeah, they can be great, especially for athletes. Let's say they're going into a practice or into a game or even at the half.
Halftime, yeah.
Yes, at the half. Goos, gels, chews, pretzels, fruit, all of those things can work really well.
Really?
Because they have the carbs and they have the electrolytes in them.
Yeah.
Just make sure you drink some water with it.
Yeah.
So we're not getting an upset stomach.
I feel like a lot of kids are dehydrated as well as under eating. Because... I think it was Grand Island, nearly as 3 years ago, they wouldn't allow kids to have water bottles in the class.
I never understood it.
And that doesn't make sense because these kids are definitely dehydrated. And how many are going to the drinking fountain in between classes? They barely have time. So you're basically making all these kids dehydrated.
Yeah, especially if these schools don't have like AC, because a good majority of them don't.
Exactly.
It's definitely problematic, especially if they're going into practice after. It makes it really challenging.
It's hard to be healthy for some of these like crazy athletes because just the schedule of it all. And again, it is a full-time job. So I had a player, big time, one of the best players to come out of Western New York. She felt that she bulked up too much in her freshman year. And she's like, okay, so I want to get down to back to my playing level, but I don't want to lose any muscle. How do you do that? Because obviously you're still going to have to eat a ton because now your workouts, you're probably working out double to lose some of that bulk. But you don't want to lose muscle. So can you attack that with diet, or is it all mostly the workout regimen?
Yeah, you can do a lot of nutrition with that, and we want to just be careful not to turn the dial too much down with the energy and the calories. That's a mistake I see a lot of athletes make, is if they want to maintain their muscle, but they want to maybe lose a little weight, which I think you're suggesting, or
Yeah.
fat mass, there's the slightest, smallest changes we're making from a nutrition or a calorie deficit is another way to think about it. So if we turn that dial too much, and when I say too much, I'm talking really like going beyond like 200 or 300 calories, especially for too long, we can have some underfueling problems, which can interfere with performance.
Right.
And it's not much, especially for female athletes, it's not much. If we turn that too much for too long, then we can have some big problems.
And the whole thing, like the freshman 15, and some of these campuses, you have access to food 24/7, and then it could go the other way, where like you bulk up just because of what you're eating or drinking. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But I mean, without counting calories, like how can you? They say like eat till you're almost full or something like that. It's like, what does that mean? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, and really this is where I think it's so important to work with a dietitian, especially if you are, I know this is a plug for myself here, but it's important to work with a dietitian because like I said, we turn that dial too much and then we create a problem on the other end. So what it looks like a lot of times is still eating your 3 meals a day, still having 1 to 2 or even 3 snacks a day, but prioritizing protein, making sure we're eating enough protein, making sure we're eating enough fiber through grains and through fruits and vegetables, and not just cutting back on food excessively because that will be problematic.
Okay. How many adults do you work with? Or are you mostly athletes?
Yeah, so mostly active people and athletes. The majority of the people I work with are adults, but I have worked and do work with a lot of youth athletes.
Do you work with any individual gyms in the area where they kind of like contract out their nutrition services?
I do not currently. It's mostly coming in to do talks with their athletes. There have definitely been times where there have been talks, but usually it's like, let's get you in here and do a talk.
Okay.
From that standpoint, at least right now, besides Damon, I contract with Damon. So
I think I don't understand, and maybe they do, but I think every club, every youth sports organization, every college team should have some type of dietitian that is watching, and taking care of some of these players, because a lot of them are on their own for the first time and they don't know what to eat. They've never cooked before, and they don't know what to cook, and they don't know what's good, what's bad.
Yeah.
And
that's the number one skill you can learn or teach your athlete is how to do some simple cooking. We don't have to be gourmet cooks, but especially when we get into college and things like that, or even if as a parent you're not home and your kid gets home and then needs to go to practice and they're interim, what are they eating? What are they putting together? So
yeah, and I mean, you're absolutely right, because think about all the additives that are put into restaurant food to make it taste amazing, right? And sometimes that can be bad. But is there a go-to restaurant? Chipotle is a prime example. That is like, if you're trying to eat healthy, that's the go-to restaurant. Is there anything else other than Chipotle that's really healthy? Because I've heard people attack Subway.
yeah.
I've heard people attack Subway of like how unhealthy it is, and now the deli meats or the processed meats are terrible. And
Yeah.
see, I read or I watch or listen to way too much of this stuff.
Yeah, and it's everywhere though. That's the thing. It truly is everywhere.
Shoved down our throats too much.
It's bad. And the question I always ask is like, if someone's asking me, is this bad? It's like, what do you mean by bad? Like, define that. Like, what are we fearful of? And is this something you're eating as the majority of your diet? Then okay, we want to add some balance. Having too much of one thing, we don't want that. So when I think of restaurants, Chipotle is always on my list. Something like a Rachel's, or a place where you can make like a bowl, a sandwich, or a wrap.
Yeah.
Get some salads. Just make sure you're throwing some carbs in there is another option, and don't load up on a salad before a game. That's always a big mistake I see people make too.
Why is that?
The fiber. We really. when we're looking at salads, lettuce, lots of vegetables, there's a lot of fiber in there,
Okay.
which can be beneficial. It's just the wrong time.
Right.
So we don't want our body to be working on
digesting.
We don't want that. We want something simple that's going to give us energy, which is carbohydrates. This is why we suggest carbohydrates.
Right.
Little fat, little to moderate protein, mostly carbohydrates.
I have sadly a former soccer parent who went through cancer, and every time that he ate salad, he's like, I cannot eat salad because it just goes. And do you believe in, when we're talking about salads, do you think about or have done any research on lectins and all of that stuff where, well, they're wild animals or they're wild plants, so they want to defend themselves, or they've developed poison so that they don't get eaten by predators, and then that is being put in. I'm like,
you're really going down the hole.
Right? I mean, because it's ridiculous. And it is true. Like, if we just went outside and ate a berry off a tree, we'd probably be sick.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah, help me.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I will admit that I have not done a full deep dive into lectins, but with this, I mean, sure, there are going to be some people that have certain sensitivities to certain foods, but I have not worked with anyone that I have been like, lectins is your problem here.
Don't eat salad.
Exactly. And if so, like, wow, there's so many other vegetables out there. Why do we need to eat salads exclusively?
Right. Okay. All right.
You're good. You're safe.
Because it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous.
It's too much. And again, like, are the kids, your kids on and just scrolling the app and like, okay, I have to cross this off my list. And then what's on their plates?
All right. Yeah. Red meat and potatoes.
If that.
But then potatoes are a plant too?
Exactly. Nightshades. Oh my gosh. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know. Man. I mean, okay, I do kind of want to get into this. Let's talk about alcohol.
Okay.
And its effect on just the entire body. Especially, okay, youth athletes. I know that it's illegal, but they drink. And, I mean, what does that do to your body, especially within 48 hours of performance?
Yeah. So dehydration is a big one. That's like truly the biggest one. I find some people will have also increase in anxiety with it. So we have to be mindful of that. Digestive issues also are a culprit with this, and impacts on appetite. So if you had these grand plans of, I want to make sure I'm eating this on the day or two after, if we're not feeling so hot from alcohol intake, which is usually the case, that's going to impact your fueling.
Let's go get greasy food, or late night pickup, or morning whatever hangover. Let's get greasy, gross food. Oh wait, we play in 48 hours, and
exactly.
And again, if you're playing on Saturday, you need to start preparing on Wednesday. And I know that a lot of these schools have 24, 48 hour rules where you can't drink within 24 hours of a practice or 48 hours of a game. It's like 48 hours isn't enough. It needs to be, well, it should be all the time, especially for an elite athlete. But, wow. Yeah, I think about that stuff all the time. Because that, about the, players bulking too much or whatever, that's also a cause of it. Yep. Because of the late night snacking after, a night out or whatever.
Yeah, and alcohol, we have to think too from a nutritional perspective. We were talking about calories. From a calorie perspective, it's not a calorie or an energy source with a lot of nutrition. They come with the calories, but we have empty calories. As I'm sure you've heard that term before, but there's nothing nutritionally in that for you.
Right. We have, like Coke, right? That's for the vending machine outside. It's like, I'm looking at that. It's like 160 calories or 140 calories for a can of Coke. And I'm like, wow. I mean, you can't go too crazy with that stuff either. But I did have a kid years and years ago. I had a kid who had headaches, had migraines. And you know what fixed him? Mountain Dew. What if he had a headache attack or whatever?
Caffeine?
Mountain Dew. I don't know if it was caffeine in general or if it was something in the Mountain Dew, but that always seemed to kind of like level him out.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's the sugar attack or...
That's a really good point too, because if it was, let's say, a low blood sugar, which again, if we're under eating, our blood sugar can get a little bit low, that can lead to headaches. I mean, dehydration can also lead to headaches, but underfueling, low blood sugar can too.
How many athletes do you have or have worked with that were diabetic?
Oh gosh, yeah, there's definitely been some. I will say that I often deal mostly with people who have type 2, but there have been a handful of athletes, especially younger athletes, that have type 1 that we're managing too.
Yeah. Any advice? Okay, so my family. So one of my nephews is type 1. His father is type 1. Two of my nephews, including the one that's playing football, is celiac disease. Mm-hmm. So he can't eat any gluten, right? Or else could have major stomach damage and whatnot. And he's trying to eat 5,000 calories without being able to eat any gluten. Mm-hmm. So what he eats is even crazier. Mm-hmm. Relatively healthy, although junk food. A lot of junk food I found is gluten-free, like Doritos, like.
I think it's a marketing ploy because people think that gluten-free equals quote unquote
healthy.
Yes.
And it's not. Mm-hmm. That is not the case. Mm-hmm. But I mean, how is it dangerous for somebody with type 1 to play football? I know that there are guys all over. There's a player for the Kansas City Chiefs that is type 1. Is it dangerous or is it completely normal and completely fine and safe?
It can be completely fine and safe. It's all about really understanding. And I know when people are first diagnosed, it's a roller coaster because we're really taking in that diagnosis, but then learning how to manage it. So when it's well controlled, when your blood sugars are well controlled and you know how to dose your insulin properly as a type 1, right, then and carb up properly, then it can absolutely be done safely.
Both of my sisters are also celiacs. And it's funny that you said that about the roller coaster because they might watch this, they might not, I don't care. One sister handled it pretty well. The other one kind of acted like it was a death sentence. It's like, pray for us. We have celiacs. It's like, it's not a death sentence. It's completely fine. You just got to watch your levels and make sure that you're taking in, make sure you just don't eat gluten.
Yeah.
And you'll be relatively okay.
Yeah. Naturally, there's going to be some grieving with the things we can't do now and the changes we have to make. But with modifications and some regular testing to make sure we're not deficient in certain vitamins and minerals, iron is a big culprit too, low iron with celiac. You're doing pretty good. And nowadays, there are so many different gluten-free options available as opposed to getting diagnosed 10 to 15 years ago.
Oh my God. When they were diagnosed, this is probably 10 years ago, the food was terrible. Mm-hmm. Oh, try this gluten-free bread. Like, that's not bread. That's a brick. Like, it is not good at all. Now, it's come a long way. Mm-hmm. It has come a long way. Mm-hmm. Going back to salads and stuff like that. What about dressings? Because you hear about how bad those are for you. But when you're dealing with athletes, it doesn't seem like you're too worried about what's good and what's bad as long as you're getting those calories and it's not coming from empty calories. But is there a fine line of what we're putting on our salads, what we're putting on on our food seasoning wise and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Anything?
So when we're talking about salads, and this kind of goes into a conversation about dietary fats and what we're adding, which I don't think are talked a lot about when it comes to athletes. Usually we're talking about protein and we're talking about carbs. But as far as salads go, I always say an oil-based dressing. Like if we can do an olive oil on that or in that dressing, that's usually a good place to be just because of the types of fats that are in those dressings. I'm not saying we can't ever put a ranch or a blue cheese or a creamy dressing on things, but if we can choose more of those oil-based ones, we're going to set up a better nutrition profile in terms of the fats.
Wow. What? Go on.
No, I was going to say, even I have a lot of athletes that are fearful of we want to make sure I don't add butter to this, or I don't add butter on my bread, or I avoid nuts and seeds because they have higher fats in them. We don't want to avoid fats because they support our hormones. They're very beneficial for our heart health, our brain, so we don't want to avoid those things.
That's something that something has gone on for 40 years is everything needs to be low fat. And it turns out that the stuff that's actually that has natural fat in it is way healthier than the stuff that has low fat or non-fat stuff. And it's crazy. And you're talking about not wanting to put butter on. It's like butter is turning a corner where it's kind of like it's healthier than margarine.
People are eating sticks of it now. Haven't you seen it? Just kidding. I don't recommend that.
No, yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, with like the carnivore people. Yeah, but it's crazy how much they've... Do you think that is the cause of a lot of these disorders? Because these kids just don't know what to eat. And they might have an overbearing parent that says, don't eat that, that's not good for you. Why are you eating that?
There's so many layers to when we talk about eating disorders and disordered eating. I want to be clear in that they both can mean different things. So an eating disorder is a clinically diagnosed eating disorder. So this could be anorexia, this can be bulimia. And then there are other eating disorders. If they don't meet that medical classification in terms of what it means, then they have an otherwise known eating disorder. Now, disordered eating habits certainly play a role. If we're skipping meals, and sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. If we're skipping meals, if we have this obsession with wanting to eat clean, wanting to eat the healthiest, and we're really ignoring the signs from our body that we need to eat more, then that can be disordered eating in itself. So I say this because we don't need to be diagnosed with a clinical eating disorder for it to be problematic and affect our health and performance.
Okay.
Social media absolutely plays a role in this. I can tell you from the dozens and dozens of phone calls I've gotten over the past probably year to 2 years, the common line is during the pandemic when my child was scrolling on social media, they started to want to eat healthier and they started cutting back. And then we had to go eventually into treatment for disordered eating disorder. And that's been the storyline over and over and over.
Wow.
So the pandemic, obviously there's a lot of isolation with the pandemic, and then there's a lot of screen time and scrolling. So I think those two things play a role. The perception of if I'm leaner or if I'm skinnier or if I'm thinner, I'm going to be liked better. I'm going to be chosen to be on the field more. I'm going to be faster.
Right.
That's the leaner equals faster thing. We can poke so many holes into it because if we're getting lean at the cost of reducing our energy through food, that's going to ultimately actually hurt our performance. That's not a performance enhancer. If we're slower, if we can't think, we can't be on our feet, or we're injured, how are we performing better?
Right.
Even if we've lost that 5 pounds or whatever it is that we want. And then there's the pressures that can come from, unfortunately, from some coaches that maybe aren't kind of in the right headspace in terms of what nutrition should look like. And I understand it's not their zone of genius, but that belief of like leaner equals faster and needing to eat clean. And we want to make sure we're not sending that message. And then, yes, parents. I know as parents, we want our kids to eat healthy, but we have to understand, like, what does healthy mean specifically for your child? Is it avoiding seed oils and red dyes, or is it making sure that they're eating enough food first and foremost?
At my old high school, there used to be a volleyball coach, a female volleyball coach, that would weigh his players. And, like, he ended up getting fired for that. Mm-hmm. But you do see it in male sports. For instance, football. You have playing weight. And then there's like, okay, you're too heavy. Is there a fine line there? Or is it a no-go zone for the most part?
There's a fine line. I understand there are certain sports that have weight requirements, right? So in those situations, you want to make sure that policies and procedures are set up well with that. Do we need to put a scale in the middle of the weight room and weigh these kids and like shout out their weights or put it on a board or even have them have the knowledge of that?
Right.
No, not necessarily. We can have a team that does blind weights where the athlete is standing on backwards, and maybe this is something that you're monitoring or giving to some other people on the sports performance team. So myself as a dietitian, and kind of looking at the trends and things like that. And we don't have to let the athlete necessarily know what that weight is. We can make some nutrition changes. Again, depends on the athlete.
And the sport.
And the sport, absolutely.
Right. Mm-hmm. So when you have a client, do you weigh them? And not really? Okay.
I don't. Again, conversations of like, do you weigh yourself? Oh, you do weigh yourself. How often are you weighing yourself? If someone's telling me they're weighing themselves every day, I'm like, how do you feel when you weigh yourself? Well, if I lose weight, I feel happy. If I gain weight, I don't feel good. It's like, okay, well, that's a sign to me that we should probably be pulling back a little bit on that weighing. Uh-huh. If our mood and our actions with food are dictated based on the weight on the scale, it's probably not a good relationship.
Okay, so, that, let's say, I'm trying to think about how to word this. Mm-hmm. Let's say the day before, would that affect your weight the next day or more 2 days? Because, again, we're talking about, preparing our bodies 2 days before. Because when I do scale every day, I find that I slipped yesterday, I need to be better today. Mm-hmm. But you're right, because I'm relating it to food or what I ate. I find that if I eat one thing, I could gain tons of pounds for the next day. And then if I'm eating just some lean meats or something like that, it's completely different.
Yep. There's so many factors involved. This could be, what was the temperature outside yesterday? Was it hot?
What was
Did
my
you sweat?
activity level?
Yep. You probably lost a lot of weight from that. Is that a good thing because we lost the weight? Not necessarily. We might be in a state of dehydration right now and need to replenish.
Yeah.
Did we have a high salt meal while on vacation, consistently because we're eating out? We come back, we see, let's say a 5-pound weight gain. There's probably going to be some fluid fluctuations from eating high salt meals. Mm-hmm. Have we been having normal bowel movements? If we're not going to the bathroom every day, we're probably holding some weight that way too.
Yeah.
So that weight daily, absolutely not. If someone wants to weigh and they have a good relationship with the weighing, I'm like, okay, let's do it once a week, or maybe even less, depending, every once a month or every couple of weeks, and we'll do it on a weekday in the morning, and that's that. We're not going to put much more into that. Right.
Wow. I mean, it's so layered. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, and then the different sports, and you play this position, so we want you to be this weight, and it could wreak havoc on a kid that's 18, 19, 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. We got some developing brains even up and through, think about it, 13, 14, 15, even 18. We got some developing brains, so we have to be careful of how we're talking about food, how we're talking about weight, and how we're positioning it, because that is going to set themselves up with some lifelong habits and behaviors in the way we think about food.
Do you do portion control and everything like that? In terms of, wow, you eat healthy. Mm-hmm. Your problem is overeating or not eating enough. Mm-hmm. Can you tell from a picture or when in their journal, in their food journal, are you having them weigh the food and making sure okay, you ate 8-ounce chicken and maybe go with a 6-ounce or 12-ounce or 10-ounce or whatever?
Yeah. So I'll say the majority of the athletes that I work with tend to undereat. So I will say probably 90% of the time, it could be even a little more, I'm like, let's add this, let's do this, instead of let's cut back or let's make this change. It's not to say that I never do. Sometimes I'm like, yes, let's reduce that portion of protein, or let's do a little bit less fat in that meal. We don't need these multiple fat sources of having avocado and then adding butter and then adding peanut butter. Let's add some variety. Let's take a little bit of that fat out and push more towards the carb side of things. So I do have those conversations. I don't have people weigh their food much. If that's a preference for them and they like to do it, as long as it's not leaning into the disordered category, then I'm okay with it. But food, photos, are often just such an easy way for my clients to be able to develop some good habits.
What's more common? It seemed like 20 years ago, maybe even more, 30 years ago, I felt that bulimia was more common. But is anorexia way more common than bulimia?
I will say when it comes to clinically diagnosed, I often see more anorexia diagnosed, but that category I was telling you about the other unknown eating disorder category, I see that often because a lot of times they're not fitting the clinically relevant specific of like they have these symptoms, so they fall into anorexia. Sometimes it's a mix of different symptoms, and then they're just diagnosed as like otherwise.
When you say that like a kid is under, most of them are just under eating, is that on purpose or is it on accident? Because they think that they're full. I'm like, I'm not hungry. Is it mostly that, do you think? Or is it, well, I can't eat that. Well, it's 8 p.m. I can't eat anymore today.
It's both. I see athletes doing it from I just didn't know that, and I didn't know I needed to eat that much sort of thing. And then, or like you said, eating, oh, it's 8 o'clock. It's too late to eat. I was told I shouldn't eat an hour before bed, so now I'm going to skip dinner. It's also misinformation that can play a role, so not knowing. That's part of it. And then there are, unfortunately, yes, intentional of like, well, how am I going to lose weight if I'm eating that? Or that food isn't quote unquote clean, so I can't eat that.
Right.
So yeah, there's some intentional, but then there's also unintentional, just plain not knowing.
Right. And I think, clear, like with me, you just don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like somebody would be like, okay, what should I eat before a game? I'm like, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And then some of our most elite athletes or highest level players, they have the same pregame meal every single time because they know what affects their stomach and what doesn't and whatnot. But I have a hard time with nutrition and stuff like that because I'm too much in my head about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, you shouldn't be eating cereal. Well, why? I have no idea. I just heard it somewhere.
That's such a good thing to ask yourself, and I think everyone listening should do the same thing. If that thought comes up, ask yourself why and see if you can answer that with something that's legitimate, right?
When I first got here in Western New York, we had I don't think he was a nutritionist or a dietitian, but he came out to the pro team that I was working with, the Flash, and he started talking about bananas. Don't eat them. They're so bad for you. Too much sugar. And it's like, that is natural sugar. Like, what are we doing? If you feel stuck in your recruiting process, we created a guide that includes feedback from 15 college coaches and 10 current college soccer players. Inside this guide, you'll find out what really works in recruiting, from showcases, ID camps, highlight reels, and more. Check it out at playmakertraining.com/recruited. And again, I don't, but then I can, again, pull up an article and say this is the best thing for you. The big thing that I'm seeing right now, a big trend, is freezing your blueberries. So then, like a late night snack, if you want like a sugar thing, it's like just pop a couple frozen blueberries. They are fantastic. But it's like, it drives me nuts. And I don't know where to go. And like, if you're an adult and want to lose weight, and then it's like, well, I've heard fasting is the best thing for you because of millions of years ago, we were hunter-gatherers and they didn't eat. I'm like, yeah, they're also dead. And they were probably eaten by a lion or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's, there's just so much to unpack.
Yeah, there really is. And I think, again, it's natural to want to go to something that feels new and maybe even extreme because it's like we're doing something, like we're overcoming this big challenge by doing something that's extreme. Mm-hmm. But we don't need to, the majority of people do not need to do things extreme. Like we need to eat more whole foods, we need to eat more fruits and vegetables, we need to get more fiber. Sure, we need to have a good movement pattern, whether that's playing sports or going for walks throughout the day and lifting weights, drinking our water. Like a lot of the basics really do work for the majority of people. And,
right.
I think sometimes this can be where it gets a little tricky for parents with youth athletes, because we might, as adults, have goals for ourselves, but those goals and what we are working on might not match and make sense for our children too. So we may have to do something different. Again, hire a dietitian, hire someone to work with that knows how to help you both make sense of it and help you feel your athlete.
Have you done any like cancer research or anything like that? Deep dives into that stuff?
No, for me, oncology has never been anything that I've specifically specialized in. So for me, I couldn't speak too much to it.
Right. Because it's just, again, just so much we just don't know. And I feel like a lot of cancers are by what we're doing to our bodies. Like if you're a smoker, or if you drink too much, or too much red meat, or whatever. It's unbelievable, like, topic. That's why I wanted to have you on, because there's just so. You've calmed me down, though. I'll tell you what. Because,
I love it. It's great.
Because it's, as long as you're balanced, as long as you're not starving yourself through fasting, because it's hard to cram. Let's say you did need 2,500 calories a day to be healthy. It's hard to cram that into 8 hours.
It is.
And consistently, because, consistently, because your schedule every day is different. And it's not always the same.
We don't live in a bubble.
These athletes. Exactly. And unless you're LeBron James, and you can actually time out your day every single day, and then you have actually somebody handing you your meal. I mean, okay, that's a little bit different. But, boy, it's so complex. What's everything that you offer at your practice?
Yeah, so I have a virtual practice. So for me, when I see athletes, I actually see them over a HIPAA compliant platform. So it's kind of like hopping on a Zoom session with me.
Yeah.
So, and which is really works good for a lot of these athletes in their busy schedules. So I offer one-on-one coaching, like work with a dietitian that way. I also have a nutrition program for youth athletes as well, which goes through a lot of the foundational work for collegiate and high school athletes to really help them build a solid nutrition plan. And from there, they get discounted sessions to kind of do like a one-on-one, ask their questions as they move through the program.
If a club wanted to work with you or have you come in, is that obviously that's available too?
Oh, I'd love to.
Yes,
I do team talks. You can reach out to me through my email, which is found on my website, www.befueledsn.com, and you can put in a request for the time, the topics, and we can have a conversation via email or on the phone of what that looks like and what your athletes might need some help with.
Do you work with more female athletes or male?
I work with a variety, actually. Right
Really?
now, I have a pretty even split of female to male athletes. So, I think, each female athletes can present their own challenges as well as male athletes. Like, they deal with similar things, but from different lenses and different types of pressures. So it's always unique.
With the males, is it under eating too?
It is under eating, but also what I notice is there tends to be this trend of always wanting to put on more muscle and put on more weight. And a lot of the information they're getting from the people around them or their coaches or things that they might be seeing on social media involves a lot of supplementation and a lot of unique things that they're doing with their diet. So the fasting, for example, or just adding a creatine supplement without doing anything else. It gets a little dangerous because we're seeing this just increase in supplementation trend to get ripped, and then ignoring some of those really strong nutrition habits. Of course, you're not going to gain weight if we're skipping breakfast. We just can't get enough food in.
What about talk more about supplements? Is there a good path to go on, or because there's some guys that I know that will take everything under the sun, and it's like, what is that exactly doing to your body? We don't even know.
Yeah, supplements are not regulated in any way by the FDA. So what we have to trust that what these supplement companies are saying in the products are in the products. And over the years, there have been recalls on products because the FDA doesn't test these products. They aren't problematic until someone has an issue or a side effect and then brings it to the attention, and then there's more information that comes out with these things.
Got it.
So there have been throughout the years, there have been, gosh, I forget what year it was, but there was this big issue with steroids, being in sports nutrition products that shouldn't be there, obviously.
Right.
Or if they say that there's caffeine in a product, it might be mislabeled. Maybe there's excessive amounts of caffeine that can be problematic because people can get ding down drug tests for excessive amounts of caffeine, or obviously not being good for our health to have that much caffeine.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful. Is this, number one, why do we want to take this supplement? What is the perceived benefit of taking it? Is it proven through the research to do what you want to take it for? Is there evidence for that? And 3, is it safe? Is it a safe product to take? If we are a collegiate athlete or a professional athlete, is this on the banned substance list? Should we not be taking this product? And is it third-party tested? Because we want third-party testing products.
Are you pretty well versed on what's banned and what's not banned?
Gosh, I'd have to do like a look at that list again because there's a big list.
Okay, one of my players, she plays at Cornell. She says that a couple of the Celsius drinks are on the banned substance list. Do you know if that's true or not?
So there was a point, and I just looked into this not too long ago, so it's escaping me. But I believe at one point that there was talk about this for the amount of caffeine, if I'm not mistaken, that was in the product. I don't know if it was another ingredient.
Because of caffeine?
Well, with high amounts of caffeine, that is considered essentially, I don't know, like a doping type of thing. Like too much caffeine can be an ergogenic aid and can be problematic. I mean, caffeine in general isn't a performance enhancer, but high amounts is something that can be problematic and is banned. Now, don't quote me because I'm not sure if it was caffeine or if it was another ingredient in some of these Celsius products. That was the reason they were on this list.
Yeah, because you'll find out that like one little ingredient will trigger your test or fail you or whatnot.
Absolutely. So you want to make sure that you're going through that list that I just mentioned. Like, does it do what it's supposed to do? Is it safe? Is it third-party tested? Does it make sense to be doing this?
What about vitamin supplementation?
Falls into the same category.
Vitamin D and vitamin C and B and all of it.
Yeah.
So same thing.
Yep. Falls into the same category. Again, third-party testing. And just to kind of give more context on that, NSF and Informed Choice are 2 third-party tested companies. So if you guys are taking any supplements, run it through that database to see if it matches, if you are a collegiate, if you are a professional athlete, just to make sure. Because these companies, the supplement companies, will pay these companies to look at their products independently and make sure that what's in it matches.
Do any of your tests or your clients, do you require them to do any like blood work or lab? Oh, you do.
This is a really good question. So you brought up vitamin D. Another one I'll see oftentimes is iron. So with my athletes, I do like to make sure that they're getting some annual lab work. For some of my athletes, I'll have them do labs twice a year, sometimes at the beginning of the season and the end of the season. But getting it done at least once a year. There's some standard a complete blood count, a comprehensive metabolic panel, a lipid panel. For athletes, from a nutrient perspective, I like vitamin D to be checked.
Yes.
In some cases, we might look at B12 if they have some digestive stuff going on or they're feeling fatigued.
Okay.
Iron is another one, but iron panel and ferritin, especially for my female athletes. If you suspect any underfueling, we want to make sure we're not only just looking at iron because it doesn't tell the full picture. Ferritin is your stored version of iron, essentially.
Okay.
And that's going to really rule and dictate how we're feeling. It has a lot to do with iron transport throughout our body. So if you can imagine, if we're feeling really winded, if we're feeling out of breath, workouts are feeling harder, if we're feeling fatigued, if we're feeling cold all the time, we want to make sure that we're getting iron and ferritin checked.
Now, if you're iron deficient, can you attack that through diet, or do you have to supplement?
You can attack it through diet. I always like to see what the lab work says. Never supplement with minerals or fat-soluble vitamins without checking your levels first. So vitamin A, D, E, and K, your fat-soluble vitamins, they can build up in our bodies. They're not like water-soluble vitamins. So let's say you're taking a vitamin C supplement.
Right.
If your body doesn't need it, you're just going to pee it out. You're just going to have some expensive pee.
Right.
Where your fat-soluble vitamins can build up, and if your levels are looking good and you're over-supplementing, you can unintentionally create a vitamin toxicity, which has very similar side effects and can be very dangerous to low levels of that vitamin.
Right.
So with iron, that is one of those. I'll hear, coach said I should start an iron supplement because I'm tired and all endurance athletes are low in iron. And it's like, no. We want to make sure we get tested because it could be your underfueling that's causing fatigue. It could be another medical issue that's causing fatigue. It could be your low in vitamin D. It could be other things.
Right.
So sometimes I'll look at those iron labs and say, okay, yeah, your iron is low. We can start on a low dose supplement. With vitamin D, we can start on a supplement, or maybe you do need a prescription strength that you need to get through your doctor as opposed to a supplement that's over the counter. Sometimes it is just diet.
Yeah, vitamin D. I mean, that's always been a big one, especially since COVID, because something about something like 90% of everybody that lives in like Buffalo are supposedly vitamin D deficient, and it's crazy. My sister, she got her blood work done last summer sometime, and she was very badly deficient in vitamin D. She started taking 10,000 IUs per day, and then got it done 6 months, and then she was perfect. So, but they had her take something else too. It was like K2.
Yes, for the bones. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, K2 as well. So, I mean, that's a whole other topic. But yeah, do you provide do you do the lab work, or do you have somebody to go to?
Yeah, so in New York State, it's a little difficult to, if I was a dietitian out of New York State and many of the other states, I could send in lab work for that athlete to do. So because we're in New York State, it's a little different. What I'll do is I'll have them either reach out to their physician or I will. I do a lot of connections with other people on the treatment team. So I talk to the coaches a lot. I'll talk to the sports med team a lot, the doctor a lot, and we'll have conversations about this. So
right.
If they don't feel like that they'd like me to, I'll connect with the doctor and say, hey, I'm noticing X, Y, or Z. Could we put in some labs for iron or vitamin D to get this checked if it hasn't been checked in the recent annual?
Right. Okay. I need to get lab work done. I mean, yes. I think everybody does.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody needs to just make sure what's going on.
Yep. It's one of the biggest things. I mean, besides obviously eating enough and eating well, it's one of the most important things you could do because you can eat, quote unquote, perfectly right. And that doesn't exist, but we can eat very well. But sometimes it's just not enough to make, if there's health issues going on, right. You might be going after the wrong thing or maybe not hitting the nail on your head in terms of like what needs to be done.
Right. Do you ever prescribe or tell people that they should probably go get like a vitamin, what is it? Like a IV, like a vitamin drip or anything like that?
Nope.
I know a lot of endurance athletes that do that. And it's like, yeah, but you're running hundreds and hundreds of miles per week sometimes, or month, definitely per month. And that's just another thing.
Sounds like something we can solve through some good fueling and hydration.
Exactly. What is your go-to for hydration? What is your go-to? Is it water? Is it Gatorade? Is it liquid IV? What is it? So if one of my players is going to listen to this and they're like, okay, we need to get this for our tournament this weekend.
Yeah. So real quick, when we think of hydration, we need to think of water and we need to think of electrolytes. Hydration isn't just about water. We need to have the electrolytes to help pull the water into our cells.
Right.
So if, let's say it's a context of like, I have a game, right? That's coming up. Yeah. I'm going to say, bring a Gatorade with you, bring a Powerade with you, bring a sports drink, which means it has sugar or carbs, okay, and it has electrolytes in it.
Okay.
So Gatorade, Powerade, there's so many other, Scratch, Tailwind, there's so many other products on the market. Element is a really, really high sodium replenishment. So you have to have some pretty major sweat losses. A good way to know is if you finish a game, is there a lot of sandy, white, gritty texture around your hairline, on your arms? That might mean that you need some higher replenishment through food or beverages. So consider that, and it does not have carbs in it. So it's more of an electrolyte drink versus a sports drink.
Got it. What what about, and one of my staff members was doing this a lot, and I started doing it last summer, but then like it was messing with my teeth. Salt in your water and squeeze the lemon. Anything what does that do? It's just adding salt. Some people are like, oh, this is a cheap electrolyte substitute. It's like, wait, then just adding salt and lemon is an electrolyte?
It kind of is in a way.
Okay.
So when we think of electrolytes, we're talking about sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, and calcium are your electrolytes. But when we look at your sweat and what's actually lost in the largest concentrations, we're looking at sodium and chloride, which is salt. That's what that is. And then potassium to a lower degree.
Okay.
So when we're looking at sports drinks, those are the things we want to look for. Now, if you did water with a little bit of salt, you're covering the salt losses, but there's probably not a large portion in there really at all coming from potassium.
Right.
So if it's just like, casually throughout the day, you want to do something like that, that's fine. But if we're talking about you're going out and you're performing at a high level for an hour or 2 hours, it's not going to cut it.
What about go-to snacks? What is the? I mean, you already said Cliff Bars earlier.
Yep.
We did talk about pretzels. We had a girl from Nebraska, and it was all about the honey stingers. Do you know? Have you had one of those or any of those?
I have.
Thoughts?
So they're not my favorite from a taste perspective, but I have a lot of people that like those.
A lot of people love them.
Yeah.
But then you look at the thing, and it's like, wait, there's no. What is it? There's no actual. Is it protein?
Yeah, it's just sugar. It's sugar.
Yeah, there's no protein in it.
It's wonderful before a game or during a game. So anytime someone's like, what kind of snack should I eat? Tell me more. Are we talking about during the day away from practice and game and workout times? Or are we talking before a workout? Because those are going to be two different snacks. So if you're outside of your workout times, I'm going to say have some carbs, but also bring in some protein, bring in some fiber, because we need those to sustain our energy. We need those for digestive health. We need those for the micronutrients. So something like, pretzels with hummus, some carrots, that could be a nice snack. A yogurt bowl with granola and fruit, another great idea for a snack.
Right.
I'm not going to suggest a bowl of yogurt with granola and fruit right before you go into a game or a workout, because that's dairy and it can be a little rough on your system before you go. You need something that's a little more gentle going in.
What about, well, first of all, that's funny. So when I was growing up, orange slices at halftime was the best thing. But then some people were like, well, if you're too busy eating orange slices, you're not drinking enough water. And I was like, well, if you just balance those two out, we should go back to having orange slices at halftime.
Yeah, there's fluid in fruit.
Yeah.
So it is hydrating. I'm not going to say it's going to meet all your fluid needs, because it's not.
Right.
You're probably going to need to have some sips of water, have some pretzels, and have some orange slices.
Right.
It's perfect.
Okay. What about after practice, after a game? Is there an important time? Because we would always tell, if we had a day where we had two games, I would always tell my teams, eat within the next half an hour. Try to get something in your body within the next half an hour, so then you're fully digested by the time we kick off for the second game. Any truth to that? Any suggestions with that?
Bingo. I always say try to get something in your system within that half hour. So if it's not a full-fledged meal, then let's have some liquids or a snack that's going to have some carbs, some liquids, and protein.
Okay.
So that goes back to our chocolate milk.
Yeah.
That's the electrolytes, the fluids, the carbs,
Nailed
the protein.
it. And he said that was big. That was their biggest staple during training camp, and they're going 2 or 3 times a day. And it's like, yeah,
it's cheap.
Pretzels and chocolate milk.
It's effective. If you don't have a wonderful appetite, that's going to be a lot more appetizing to you than crushing a sub or something like that.
I forget which NFL team. There was a team that they were talking about the Smuckers, those peanut butter and jelly things. Crustables, thank you. And something that was like they go through like 1,000 of them a week. And it's like, well, that makes sense. 53 guys and, so many practice sessions. But, I mean, I guess that would be a good... I mean, if NFL guys are doing it, Maybe it is good, maybe it's not. I don't know.
It has some merit to it because number one, calories, energy, right? We need that.
Exactly.
There is some sugar in there. There's a little bit of fat in there from the peanut butter too that can give us some sustained energy.
Yep, and there's protein. Yeah.
Yeah, so those can play a role. I mean, I have some of the cyclists I work with, they'll take those on their bike rides, which can be really good. If you're doing something, real high intensity, it might not be the best snack to have during.
Right.
But they can work, and I have
Especially after, like maybe after a game.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
What about are you? So when you go grocery shopping, are you getting organic? Are you getting like if you're let's say you're going to pick up peanut butter, what are you getting? Are you getting the Jif? Are you getting the Skippy? Or are you getting like the what are you getting?
I'm getting the natural peanut butter. That's natural. That's what I like to get. I don't fall into the organic everything trend by any means. I definitely just choose the natural as far as that goes. I don't do a lot of organic.
All right, and that goes with like fruit and everything too?
Yep.
Okay. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, are we placing the right emphasis in certain spots? Like if that financially you can do that.
Yeah.
And again, you're eating enough food to support your performance. Like go off. It's not going to be harmful by any means, but if we're just focusing on clean, organic, and all that, and we're not doing enough with the whole eating part, then that can be a problem.
Talk about your performance plate again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the biggest portion is the protein?
Carbs.
Mm-hmm. Carbs is the biggest. Mm-hmm. Then protein?
So protein, believe it or not, I know this is maybe will come as a surprise for some people, but protein, athletes do need more than the standard recommendation as far as protein goes. Okay. But it does not necessarily increase at any point during their training. I recommend the standard amount of protein for an athlete at any point, unless they're telling me, yes, I really want to work on, I might change it a little bit, increase it a little bit if we're working on some body composition or wanting to put on some more muscle mass.
Right.
But I always have a pretty standard higher level of protein intake for my athletes.
And then do you do it based on their weight and everything, like with grams of how many grams of protein they should be taking or whatnot?
Yeah, base it on their weight. Yeah. So like the standard calculation, and I need a calculator to do it, but I use kilograms. So I take their weight, divide it by 2.2 to get to the kilograms. And then I'm looking for usually somewhere between 1.4 to 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Okay.
So I hear a lot of people say like eat 1 gram per pound of body weight. That is actually a pretty high recommendation, and I'll see that a lot from a lot of the male athletes I work with.
1 gram per pound of body weight?
Yes, I hear that a lot from a lot of my male athletes that come to me.
Holy cow. And they're not doing that through food. They're doing it through like whey protein and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that stuff?
So I have like 2 bones to pick with this. Number one, if we're eating 1 gram per pound of body weight, there's only so much food you're going to be able to eat. So if you're meeting your protein needs, but you're letting your carbs fall by the wayside, you need that for your energy and your recovery. Uh-huh. So you might not feel your best and get what you need. And then number 2, we don't want to be getting all of our nutrition from supplements, because while whey protein or any type of protein powder for that matter gives us protein, it doesn't provide the same variety and array of nutrients that sitting down and having a balanced meal will. Uh-huh.
Okay, so you got protein, carbs, starches.
And so we have our...
That could be both. Exactly. Carbs could be starch or like potato, right?
Yes.
That's carbs and starch, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So we'll have our carbohydrates, we'll have our proteins, and then we'll have our color, which your fruits or vegetables there. Right. And a little bit of fat. So standard is roughly about a quarter to maybe a third of that plate for your, let's say your off season, or maybe you have an injury. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do with carbs. Like usually a fourth to a quarter, a quarter to about a third. It really depends on your activity level. Right. If you're going into an in season, you have 2-a-days, you have tournaments, you're increasing your intensity or duration at all in terms of workouts. Uh-huh. We're bumping your carbs up to at least half of that plate. Okay. So if you have high intensity, half plate carbs, quarter plate of your protein, and then a quarter plate of your fruits or vegetables.
Do you think that when you're going grocery shopping, it should look like that too? Like your percentages? Like this is how many carbs you should be getting. This is, and everything?
Yeah, I mean, when anytime, so this is how I do anytime I'm going grocery shopping, I make myself a list because I want to make sure I'm getting the right foods. So I write down what are some of my meals going to be during the week.
Right.
I'm going to have X, Y, and Z, and then I make sure I give it a double look and say, okay, do each of these meals check the boxes for the performance plate? Is there a carbohydrate? Check. Is there a protein source? Check. Is there a fruit or a vegetable I'm throwing with this meal? Check.
Yep.
And then from there, I'm like, okay, cool. I have what I need. Let me write out the ingredients for this meal and then pick them up and put that together.
Okay.
So I encourage anybody to just do a scan of the plate and see, do I have these macronutrients and micronutrients that I have on the plate? Am I getting my carbs? Am I getting my protein? Am I getting some fruits or vegetables? And then a little bit of fat.
Right.
And even for some of these youth athletes, I always, don't forget your fluids. Milk is a great way to get in some extra protein on that plate, some extra carbohydrates, some more electrolytes. Juices also can play an important role in getting enough and getting some more vitamin C and getting more carbohydrate. So don't ignore that.
Can we talk about like calorie deficiency or not deficiency, deficit?
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like some of these kids, they don't realize how many calories they're burning. So then they don't properly fuel. Mm-hmm. So because they always say, oh, well, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. Does that mean like active calories of like during your workouts? Or does that mean your total 4,000 calories that you're burning in every day?
That's total. When people are making that recommendation, it's total. So when we're thinking about it, if let's say you're an athlete that's increasing your exercise or you're increasing your movement, that might naturally put you into a little calorie deficit because the energy's going out. We're moving more. Some of that energy's going out. You can simultaneously do that through food as well. So if you reduce your food intake, you reduce your energy or calorie intake, that is another way that you put yourself into a deficit.
Okay.
So if you do both at the same time, you could be running into an issue of doing too much. We have to, again, be careful. We don't want to turn the dial too much.
Right. Do you believe in, well, do you like fitness trackers and stuff like that to see to kind of partner with what your plate should look like, or not really?
Do you have some examples of ones you're thinking of?
Like an Apple Watch or a Whoop, where they say basically how much energy you've exposed or how much zone 2 cardio you did or zone 4 or wow, you were in zone 5 for 20 minutes during this game. Mm-hmm. You better eat that much or...
It can be helpful. I don't use them often, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Data is a tricky one because data can be useful, but also data can become obsessive for the right or the wrong person, I should say.
Yes.
So if we're noticing that, again, our mood is changing, that we're hyper focused on eating the perfect amount of food or very specific things, then that should be a little bit of a red flag again, that's not a good match, a good relationship.
Wow.
And the accuracy of things too. Nutrition labels, they are not 100% accurate. Logging your food, not 100% accurate. Fitness trackers, not 100% accurate. So if we're looking to I need to be as accurate as possible, we're never truly going to get there. Like the perfection and the exactness doesn't exist. Uh-huh. So what can we do that's going to be, good enough to support our body without getting too in the weeds with it?
Have you had athletes that have tried any extreme diets and then you just realize oh my God, you are down a bad path?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Whether it could be vegan, it could be carnivore, it could be what's the most popular one right now? It's not paleo. What's it called? I forget what it's called. But where it's just basically just meat and vegetables. What is that called? Whatever. Do you?
I will say that I often end up meeting with people in the aftermath of when they've done these things.
And they're trying to build back what they lost.
Exactly. So I will kind of, I wish I was the first meeting for a lot of people, but unfortunately.
Before going on the diet.
Exactly. I get them after. So we're doing a lot of trying to get them back into a healthy spot to support their metabolism, to support their hormone health, to do a lot of the quote unquote fixing. And it takes time and it depends. How long were you doing these diets for? I mean, if this is something you have been spinning over years and years and years, and we're in diet after diet, it might take quite a few years to get back to a good spot with your health and how you're feeling for that to happen. So general rule, the longer you've been doing it, the longer it can take to get to a better spot. And that's with you committing to it consistently and not going back into another diet because we get frustrated that our body composition or weight isn't changing.
Right.
So it can take a lot. I've definitely seen people in the aftermath of vegan diets, especially because we have to be very, very, very careful. It is restrictive by nature, and I'm not saying we're doing these things on purpose, but it can be a not knowing as well. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that we're getting the right nutrients from a diet if we're following it like that. What else have I seen people do? The repeats with the 75 hard lately have been really tricky.
Okay, what is the 75 hard? Isn't that like a part of a workout too? Or
Yes.
is it...
So people, when they talk about it, and if you're listening, I try not to get upset about this, but people will say it's not a diet. It is a mental toughness, if you will. So
Okay.
it involves, don't quote me here, but it involves like reading a certain amount of pages per day
Yes.
of a book.
Yep.
I just read up on it too because I was going with this through a client. Two 40 or 45-minute workouts a day, so 2 workouts a day.
Which is kind of crazy because the people that are trying to take this on are not physically fit at the moment, and then
Yes.
that's how injuries happen.
Yes,
Yep.
or they're already moving a lot, so why are we needing to force in something
Why do we
else?
need 90 minutes of workout?
We don't need, we're not getting the recovery that we need. I don't believe there's any specific of like eat X amount of calories, but there's like no cheat meals or maybe only clean food. So there's a lot of parameters around like lifestyle, exercise, and some dietary changes. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to be able to do this, for 75 days of doing this. But the thing is, people they get like a buzz off of an adrenaline rush after being able to follow this.
Yeah.
And they'll kind of go into it time after time after time, or try to make this a long period of time that they do this for. Like, it's like, this is where I exist now. And that's where it's problematic because we're unintentionally sometimes under eating and not recovering well.
Exactly. And if you're working out 90 minutes every single day, mm-hmm. you better be fueling yourself a ton. The older our college players are, the more they work out. Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, oh, this is my 3rd workout of the day. And I'm like, how much have you eaten? Oh, nothing.
Exactly.
I ate some mixed nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you need something else.
Yep. And that's the big step up from high school to college is like we're lifting more, we're practicing more, and we might be eating less because the dining hall closes at this time. Or
Yep.
I don't get my meal in. So there's just big gap between the food and the exercise.
And then let's say the dining hall is closed. And they're like, well, let's go to McDonald's. And then now they're eating not good stuff. So
it's better than nothing. But
it is better than nothing.
I am going to sit down with them and say, let's think of a game plan. What can we have in the dorm as a backup that's super easy to make or put together? Mm-hmm. We'll come up with a plan that makes sense for them because I know we tend to go to extremes, but there's so many shades of gray between that we can work on based on what your schedule looks like.
Do you consider what you prescribe, air quotes, to your clients as a diet? It's a lifestyle. Or, well, what would you say? How would you define it?
I would describe it, and I kind of cringe when I say that because I feel like this whole diet culture has kind of taken over that term of it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. But truly, it's what if you were to, I always ask the client, what do you want your nutrition to feel like? What do you want to feel like, and what do you want your nutrition to feel like? Because that's going to define what your lifestyle, what your everyday looks like, as opposed to what your neighbor, what your friend, what your college, your teammate or anything looks like. And it's going to look different for everybody. So yeah, it's a lifestyle, but it's not going to look the same as everybody else's. Yeah. And what makes sense to you with the time you have available, your finances, all of those things.
Do you believe in superfoods or anything like that? Something that you get every single time, like the blueberries in the freezer thing, or eggs. Eggs is a big one. They're the number one thing that you can eat is eggs. But then people are worried about cholesterol. Then some people will say cholesterol is not real. And then Yeah.
And then we're down in the hole again. But it's so true. So like superfoods, I understand it's such a flashy term.
The thought process of it. Yeah.
I think I would probably have like a zillion followers and maybe make like so much money if I can sell my soul and be like, this is a superfood. This is going to say, like if I use flashy, sexy
this is
terms,
this is going to cure cancer.
Yes, but no, I have ethics and I care about your health and your mindset.
Right.
So I understand the idea behind the superfood, but there's not like one magical food. So if I'm going to say like eating fiber is like a superfood, sure, but that umbrella is so many different things and it's not putting this one food on a pedestal.
Right.
So there are going to be certain subsets of food that like provide a lot of nourishment, but like there's a lot of them.
Okay. Yeah. All right. What about, going all over the map. What about AG1 or athletic greens and stuff like that? Anything?
No,
Okay.
It's so expensive for what it
is. It is.
The only time.
Just eat fruits and vegetables.
I know. And that's the thing. Like people, when I say, why aren't we eating fruits and vegetables? Oh, they're expensive or they go bad. It's like,
lectins, like I talked about.
Yes. Or the AG1 is so expensive. So maybe if we're an athlete who is traveling that doesn't have the ability to eat like some fruits and vegetables while they're traveling or whatever the case, like maybe, though I have not yet recommended this, maybe we'd consider that.
Right.
But no, I think it can be like such a waste of money, and I don't ever suggest greens powders.
Yeah.
And it's hard because they're all over every single podcast you listen to. They have TVs now. It's commercials now.
Yes.
It's like,
I just saw one during the NBA playoffs. Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy. What about if you're like on a fitness journey or you're trying to get fit again, and then you hear rice, broccoli, chicken breast, and that's like from like 30 years ago.
I'm traumatized even hearing you say it.
Right. So is that real? Like what? Like that's not. I don't feel like that's. You also have to have like a good relationship with food. And I feel that if you eat rice, chicken, and broccoli every single day, you are going to hate food.
Yes.
And then hence the undereating.
Yep. Part of eating healthy, in my opinion, is having a good relationship with food. That goes into your health. And enjoying your food is the other side of things. So if you love chicken, rice, and broccoli, eat
it all the time.
Go for it. If that like truly makes you happy. But if you're eating chicken, rice, and broccoli and, crying at the dinner table while we're doing this, then there's probably something wrong.
Having to shove it down.
Exactly.
To meet your macronutrients.
Yeah. And hey, I've been there before where that's all I have in the house and I just have to make a meal happen. Sometimes we just have to do the thing. Right. You're not always going to have the perfect meal in front of you that you love to eat, especially as an athlete. But sometimes you just have to do the darn thing and you have to eat it. But yeah, we want foods that make us happy. Anytime I'm having an athlete, they're like, what should I eat? I'm like, well, what do you like? What sounds good right now? And then from there, if they're like, I like pasta sounds great. I'm like, great. Let's make a performance plate around that pasta and make it nourishing. So I want pasta. Okay, let's add some meatballs with that. Let's add some chicken with that for some protein. And let's add like a side salad or a vegetable with that. Boom. You have what you like, but you also have those nourishing foods on your plate as that performance plate.
What about dessert? Is that allowed?
Yes, it is. It's always allowed. I always have athletes that are maybe afraid to put it in their journal. They're like, I thought you yell at me. And I'm like, well, you don't know me very well then.
Right.
But yeah, dessert can be a part of that plate. And dessert's going to vary. Like, are we talking about, like, for some people, dessert, some berries and some Cool Whip sound good. And then for me, if I'm having dessert, like, I want some ice cream. Like, I want some cookies.
Yeah.
That is okay, right? Are we having this with every single meal? Okay, why are we having this with every single meal? Is it a comfort? Is it I have a sugar craving? Because those two things are telling me something. Are we using it as a coping mechanism? That's okay, but what else are we using to help as a coping mechanism? Where other tools can we get here? And then number two, if we're having sugar cravings, why? Is there some blood sugar dysregulation happening? Are we not eating enough throughout the day? Because if not, our body's going to communicate with us that we're hungry. And sugar is an easy source of food, so that could also be a reason too.
That's another thing with the blood sugar. I'm noticing more and more athletes are wearing glucose monitors. What do you think? Anything behind that?
So it goes back to
That's the thing that's like on the back of their,
Yeah.
which diabetic, my nephew, and yeah.
Yeah, so CGMs or continuous glucose monitors, they are these little sensors that you can put, they're a little needle in them, and it can give you a continuous stream of data to let you know what your blood sugar is throughout the day. And a lot of these sensors will kind of alert you of like, okay, you can put your food in throughout the day so you can kind of start to see, what does my blood sugar look like during exercise? What does it look like before a meal, after a meal, during a meal? Now, a normal response to eating food and eating carbohydrates is to see your blood sugar go up and go up somewhat significantly.
Okay.
Now, sure, we shouldn't be seeing these astronomical highs from eating, but we should be seeing a spike, for lack of a better term. We are going to see an up in that. I'm kind of a graph here. We should see an increase in our blood sugar. And then we should see a steady decrease after. And there are going to be specific guidelines for how much of a blood sugar increase we should see. But there's this idea out there floating around that our blood sugar should not move. It should stay stable and stagnant and it shouldn't move. Well, that means you're not eating enough and you're probably like, are you alive? Because our blood sugar should have ups and downs throughout the day.
Yeah.
So it starts to get scary because if we're wearing these glucose monitors and we're seeing, oh, my blood sugar went up after this meal, my blood sugar went up after this meal, and we're getting worried about that, there should be some increases and decreases throughout the day.
Right.
So are we worrying too much about the data? Are we getting too in the weeds? Are we getting too obsessive?
Do you think that's the case for diabetics as well? They have to wear that?
It can get scary, especially when we are first diagnosed. I noticed this whether you're diagnosed with type 1 or type 2 to see that happening. But then we start to understand it. It's like, okay, well, yes, my blood sugar should increase in relation to a carb-containing meal. And then we start to see, oh, well, if I eat, for some people, I eat this specific type of cereal versus this specific cereal, I actually see that my blood sugar doesn't go as high. So maybe this one might be a better choice for me.
Right.
So again, it depends on the person. I could eat Cheerios and then someone else I know eat Cheerios and we can have a completely different glucose or blood sugar response.
Yeah.
And so it's about really, again, the knowledge and the information of like, what should we expect to see? And then does it make sense for me? So if I'm an endurance athlete or an athlete monitoring my blood sugar, but I don't have diabetes, it might provide some information, but we don't want to get too in the weeds of like, oh, I don't want to eat.
Tracking every single thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You said that you are working with athletes that were just diagnosed or have been diagnosed with type 2. Do you work with them to try to reverse that, or?
I will, in a sense, and when reverse is kind of like a tricky word. So,
is it reversible? Is that real?
I know. So you're always going to have if your blood sugar is high, if your A1C, your hemoglobin A1C is high, and that's how they'll diagnose often with diabetes. Because I cannot diagnose, but if the doctor has diagnosed you with type 2, it's usually based on your hemoglobin A1C.
Okay.
Which is your blood sugar control over a 2 to 3 month period.
Okay.
So when this comes back and we look at those numbers, I'll look at someone's diet, and usually the things we're working on is meal timing, fiber intake, and protein intake, and exercise.
Yeah.
So as we start to work on that, we will see improvements in A1C. Sometimes we see it go back to what would be considered a normal A1C, but you still have the predisposition for whatever reason for it to creep up. This could be genetics. This could just be the way that your body handles blood sugar. So we can keep it well controlled, but for some people that might have a trickier time if there is genetics involved. Doesn't mean you're doomed though.
Right. What's your favorite, what's the best fiber, like, way to increase your fiber? Just fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, a lot of us,
Or
specifically
vegetable.
Americans, are just not eating enough fiber. And while you kind of asked that question about cancer, while I don't specialize in this area, even with like colorectal cancer and things like this, there has been just lots of studies showing that we're not eating enough fiber, and there could be a strong link with that. We're not having enough fiber. We're not having enough regular bowel movements. Our gut isn't healthy as a result.
Right.
So for most of us, we should be eating at least 25 grams of fiber per day, depending male or female. Some people I have up eating as much as like 30, 35 grams of fiber. I have people that are eating up to 50 grams of fiber a day. I've had people eat 70, 80 grams of fiber a day and do not recommend that because while fiber is wonderful, just like anything, we can overdo it.
Moderation.
Yes. So fruits, vegetables, grains, making sure we're eating whole grains, whole grain pastas, oatmeal, whole grain breads, quinoa, so some of your grains there. Legumes, beans are another fiber source as well.
Right.
Avocados actually have a good amount of fiber too.
Gut health. I mean, that's you just said it. That's the big keyword right now is your microbiome and GI doctors and stuff like that. Do you have a specific GI doctor that like you would send athletes to if they're having issues or anything like that?
Yeah, in the area there's a couple. I have like a nice little reference list for physicians that I've worked with or clients I've had really good experiences with that I like to connect with. So yeah, there usually is. Again, sometimes I will see athletes after they've been through the ringer with tests and this and that. So a lot of times, a lot of the testing has already been done. But if it hasn't been, that's the first step is to get some testing done.
Yeah. Yeah, my whole family went through that whole thing with the GI stuff. So both of my sisters are also celiacs, and then they each had a son that have celiacs. And then I just heard one of them say something about if you have celiacs, type 2 is down the line. It's like they're all linked, and it's crazy.
Celiac is an autoimmune condition. So when we're looking at different like autoimmune conditions, if you do have one, you have the predisposition to other autoimmune conditions too. So this might be rheumatoid arthritis, this might be hypothyroidism, if it's Hashimoto's. So you do run that risk when you do have an autoimmune condition.
It's crazy. And then you find out like who the carrier is, and then you just blame that person. And
makes us feel better a little bit.
Yeah. What would you say to a parent that wants to have their son or daughter come and see you, but the kid doesn't want to, or vice versa? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of kids that are like, hey, you know what? Let's make sure that I'm eating properly, or I feel whatever, and I want to know what to eat. But then the parents are like, oh, you don't need that. You got me.
It's so tricky, and you bring up two excellent points. I often get the phone call from the parent first, and they're like,
Makes sense.
Johnny wants this X, Y, or Z, like they want to work on this, and they kind of tell me what's been going on in the household or what's been going on with their health, and gives me a pretty good idea, which is always good. And my question is always like, well, how does Johnny feel about this? Do they want to work with someone on this? And usually the answer is yes. They usually do want to work with someone. And I always laugh because sometimes I'm just reiterating what the parent says.
Oh, 100%.
But it lands differently
when it's coming from somebody else.
That's in sports and somebody else. So it lands a little differently. And then sometimes, and I will say a lot of times, there's a lot of education to do with the parent and with the child. So depending on the age, and honestly, a lot of times, my first session is I'd like the parent to be there and I like the child to be there at the same time.
Okay.
So we're both on the same page as to what I'm noticing, what I'm seeing, and some of the changes in the practices and behaviors in the household.
Okay.
So this might be talking about food a little bit differently in the household. This might be prioritizing food a little differently in the household. The parents are the main caretakers in terms of like the purchasing of the food. So having the parents involved is so important. I could give the kids all the advice in the world, but we've got to make sure that the parent is connected to that same message.
Right, and they're doing most of the shopping and the grocery shopping and some of the cooking and and
when it's the other way, when it's the young athlete who wants to really work on a lot of things, but the parent, for whatever reason, isn't as supportive as they want them to be, I will do my best with having conversations with that parent of like, what can they provide? Like, this is why we want to do, and what can we provide? Because there's a variety of reasons. It could be finances. It could be mental health. It could be not knowing, or like you kind of mentioned, like there could be some egos that are involved with it too. So I like to understand like why there might be a little bit of a barrier there when you talk with the parent. And then I always reserve the right to recommend, like, we might want to get maybe a therapist involved, someone who can really kind of navigate this conversation between parent and child too, to make it a more hospital supportive environment. Yeah.
And all of your stuff is pretty much remote or online and through that kind of like Zoom, because I just started really kind of reaching out and trying to kind of mentor coaches, mentor parents, and players, and I do it all through something similar called StreamYard. And so you're 100% virtual.
Yeah, unless there's someone locally that says like, "Hey, I want to have you come talk in person,"
Right.
to my athletes, I will do that. And I've even traveled to cross country camp in PA to do like an in-person weekend talk. I've done that before.
Right.
But I will say the majority of my work is virtual. And so if it's someone
that.
that wants a talk that's in California, we can do a virtual setup for something.
Absolutely.
Like that. Mm-hmm.
How long has your practice been around?
So I officially started my practice in during the pandemic. So in 2020, is I was working in a local OBGYN office and orthopedic office, doing some sports nutrition and things like that through there.
Okay.
And at that point, when things changed,
Everything shut down. It's like adapt or die.
Yep. So I was forced to, go out of the office and go virtual with a lot of these things. And I was like, wait a minute. I can do this on my own.
I could
Yeah. And I appreciated, like, I had great experiences in the offices I worked with, great connections and good relationships. But I really wanted to work specifically, like, the majority of my work with sports and athletes.
And you're 100%, this is your only, you're not in offices anymore or anything like that?
No, 100%.
That's awesome.
It's great. I really love what I do and the opportunity.
Like 5 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like my long-term thing. And really, that's why I've started this, too. I like the in-person podcast way more than virtual, but eventually I'll do more virtual. But there's too many people around here, and I kind of want to take that on the road. But when I'm working with coaching clients or whatever, that's all remote, and it's wonderful.
There's something about having that, Western New York is amazing with the community and the connections, and it's just wonderful to be a part of that community because there are so many people that we can connect with and help with and network around here that it's great. Like this, like for example,
absolutely,
or the run clubs that I work with, or even some of the team talks that I do. It's a great opportunity to be able to do those things.
So the number one reason why I stayed in Buffalo is because the word of mouth. The word of mouth was so good and supportive. Mm-hmm. Whereas where I came from before with coaching in Michigan, it was such a it's kind of like a hotbed, and it's dog eat dog, and it's like, well, we're going to hide you and we're not going to spread the word at all because you're just going to coach us and make my kid great. And I'm like, well, that's not going to help my business, so.
Yeah, and just like, I think gets down to like the root of what we want to do is be able to help athletes, be healthier and perform well and have success with things. It really like limits that ability when we can't help more than one person or one specific team.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And by doing it virtual, you can do you might be able to work out with more clients and at least cast a wider net because it's not just Buffalo people. And yeah. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Be Fueled. Wait, what is it? Be Fueled
Sports Nutrition is the name of my business.
BeFueledSportsNutrition.com.
Oh, so the website is BeFueledSN, so abbreviation.
BeFueledSN. When I send this out, I think yours is going to be this Monday. So I will send it out, and then I'll have like all your contact information. So then like people can reach out because hopefully, I mean, this is an issue that a lot of people talk about, but then they don't ever talk about like fixing it. Mm-hmm. They just talk about, well, eating disorders and just, I see a lot of kids under eating or whatever. And then when the college players came in and said, hey, we have a lot of anorexia going on our team. It's like, okay, I need to talk to somebody that knows what they're doing,
Yeah. It's like, being able to screen and kind of understand some of the signs or symptoms. Like I always talk with parents and even coaches, like some of those like yellow flags are, I've increased my exercise. Okay, has the food increased then? Or I started focusing on eating healthier. I know like in theory that sounds like wonderful, but that also can be a yellow flag. Like what does healthier mean? Does that mean we started cutting back? Like what is your version of healthy? Does this mean we started adding maybe more fruits and vegetables? Does it mean we started adding a breakfast? Like what does that mean? So being able to screen and kind of understand some of those yellow flags, and then put small changes into place for some of these athletes. Like, we don't need to do like a 180 and the next day be doing everything quote unquote perfect.
Right.
We just need to be making some small changes, tweaks, see how we feel, see how we respond, and go from there.
Wow. I learned a ton. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we will end it right there.
I hate soccer.